Let me do that again. Yep. My name is Paul Shelley, and welcome to the AstroHistorian. This is a channel dedicated to exploring and explaining the lore of sci-fi and space universes and discussing their impact. Today we'll be looking at the ships of Argo, Consolidated Outland, and Greycat for the floor of IAE 2955. Now, we go into here. Professional streamer, y'all. Not really. Yeah. This is lore tours, where I go onto the floor, talk a little bit about the manufacturers of the floor, and of course the ships and the lore behind them. Now, not all the ships have lore on the floor, but they often have some context for the wider design choices of that manufacturer. So the tour is starting at the Argo section here. So it's in the back left of the, or back right of the main floor. We're going to get in this pretty quickly because it is here in the United States Thanksgiving. I know this was originally planned for yesterday, but there was an issue in game where you couldn't log in, and because of the easy anti-cheat code, like error was 7,001K, 7,000K. 7K, I should say, not 7,000K code, and so I wasn't able to get into the game, so it didn't make a lot of sense to do it. So we basically just pushed back the tours to their extreme ends. So we'll be doing the Argo, Consolidated Outland, and Greycat today. Tomorrow we'll be doing Crusader and what's the other one? And Tumbril, and then on Saturday we'll be doing Argo. What's this? Thank you. I have nowhere to put this because I don't have any. I don't think this will fit in any of my. Yeah, it's too much. I'll just hold on to it for now. I can't. Oh. Many of the vehicles on display at this year's IAE are conveniently available to rent. I'm like hip now. Oh, it is on my hip. Neat. There we go. All right. Well, stop leaving me. I'm not some god. Stop leaving me gifts. Attention visitors to the Intergalactic Aerospace Center. Please take care of viewing the vehicles on display. And remember, they're here for everyone's enjoyment. This is a pristine. It's a pristine Tavaran service marker. Metals. There we go. That's all I can take, unfortunately. All right. So, live channel, y'all. These people are these are folks who are coming here live on the floor. I have some people on Discord as well. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about each of these manufacturers individually, starting with Argo. So, the thing to understand about Argo is that Argo is a train company. I did not stutter. You did hear that right. Argo is a train company. They got their start making monorail tracks. And as a result, they build, they originally were building a bunch of trains designed effectively for repairing tracks. They built modules for trains to be attached to trains that would repair tracks as they went, so that they wouldn't have to maintain monorail tracks. Because they have the Trans Am, the Trans-American line, which went from Alaska all the way down to the tip of South America. And this was designed to facilitate trade up and down the North and South America. But in the age of spaceships, it wasn't doing so well, especially the early age of spaceships. So Alana Redmond, who was the daughter of a train conductor, went to school to be a train engineer. Like her mother, she grew up on the Trans Am because her mother ran the Trans Am. And when she went to work for the Trans Am, she sort of discovered that by accident, when they had stopped the line to do some repairs ahead, because that was something that constantly had to happen, and as a result, trains were slower than spaceships and more inconvenient, more expensive. She discovered that by accident, the maglev, it wasn't monorail, it's maglev, but it's a maglev. The maglev forces had force welded a piece of scrap metal that had fallen onto the tracks and would look almost exactly like the patches that she would see engineers do on the lines. So she came up with a concept for something that could be attached to modern train technology, to modern trains themselves, usually on the back, that would scan the tracks. So it would have like a scanner in the front and a manufacturer on the back, and they would scan the front and see if there was a damage to the rail, and then the one in the send it to the stuff to the back, to the one on the back. The one on the back would then lay down a patch. I think it was actually all in front. It would scan ahead and it would lay down a patch at the front at the location. Anyways, it would basically repair the tracks as the train went. This meant the trains could run faster and run longer, and allowed for new developments of the train technologies. This took off, and so she named her company Argo. AR for her first name, her name. The first initials were her first and last name, AR, and Go as in go. So it was R-Go was the AR-Go was the name. And that became Argo Transportation when they bought up a train manufacturer in Japan, like the last remaining train manufacturing company that made engines and cabs. They bought that Japanese company, and then they became the biggest and only train manufacturer on Earth. They then sped things up. They created what's known as the latch and go system. They found out that by the time they had basically made train travel as efficient as it possibly could be, the thing that was slowing them down when it came to transporting goods was ships. Ships were too slow. They would arrive at a location and they'd have to wait for ships to come in to unload the items and put them in. They just said, screw that, and they built an entire locking system which could be attached to ships that could lock onto train cars and take them directly off the train. So ships could come down and grab and go. The problem was that they developed this technology and they had to prove that it would work. So they created the, look up the name itself, the OUC, I think, the Orbital Utility Vehicle, Orbital Utility Craft. Yeah, OUC, Orbital Utility Craft. They bought a struggling shuttle company called Telemann Shipworks, and they used that technology to create the OUC. And the idea behind this was that it was a ship that had the latch and go technology built in, so it could literally come down, grab these shipping containers, and take them straight up to orbit. They weren't using quantum drives, but they were able to just really efficiently come down and do it. They could be piloted by a single person. They were very loved. It's super quick. However, pretty quickly, people found out that they loved the OUC so much that they started to modify the OUC with aftermarket upgrades to turn it into everything but just a hauler. It had things like a people transporter, it had things like a salvager, all sorts of things. And because the OUC was only run for a short amount of time, they were actively buying and retrofitting and refitting OUCs to keep them going well beyond their lifespan. Argo went, there's a market for it. And so they created their first ever ship. We'll go over here for that. Their first ever ship designed beyond the OUC is called the Multi-Purpose Utility Vehicle, or the MPUV. So the MPUV, very little has changed since its creation, was designed specifically to go to and from stations and landing zones, like dockyards. But it was also designed to have more utility beyond just the OUC. So using the latch and go technology, and I'll show you what the latch and go technology is. It's right here. This is the technology they developed. It's a sort of a ring lock that easily locks something in, and then unlocks it. And they just put it standard on all vessels, all cargo. And they could just retrofit those ring locks for a number of different things. So the MPUV we know has a personnel carrier. It has a cargo transport that has like an internal storage area. It has this, which you can use as just kind of picking up cargo boxes. I think it's up to like 8 SCU. I think it might be 2 SCU crates, but like smaller crates. But there's also in fiction, there are versions that have medical bays attached. There are salvage bays attached. There's basically anything you can do, you can add it as a module to make it good. That's why it's called the multi-purpose utility vehicle. And it was so efficient that the Navy bought the MPUV to use on all of their capital ships. Some ships were redesigned to have an MPUV launch and recovery hangar specifically, like the Idris. But you find these all over the verse. Basically anywhere you go with a station or some sort of infrastructure or even a large ship, there's an MPUV flying around somewhere doing some of the small things. You can think about it in Star Trek, they have the worker bees. This is very similar to the worker bees. Star Citizen's version of the worker bees. This was released in 2665. Oh, no. 2619. So shortly after the Second Varn War. But as a result, they renamed themselves from Argo Transportation to Argo Astronomics, which is what their current name is. All right, since then, they've had a boost of various different ships. We don't know when the raft was built, but the original purpose of the raft was to serve as sort of a ship that could load and unload on its own without any external support. So basically, you could fly the raft down to a location, pick up cargo straight from the ground, and take off. You didn't need a dockyard. You didn't need people loading it in. It could load itself and unload itself and move on its way. So it was able to work in very rugged areas that didn't have a lot of infrastructure. And that's sort of the Argo astronautics theme, is that outside of the mole, pretty much every ship is designed to support the running of a space station, like a rural space station, or like to serve for roles that don't exist at the time before those infrastructure could come in or supplement infrastructure that's already overloaded. That's sort of their shtick. I guess you can call them Big Orange because all their ships also have orange colors, but I think that's because Argo is headquartered on Mars. Yes, Argo's headquarters is on Mars, so that makes sense. The orange colors to fit with the Martian soil and such. So, all right. With that, let's move over to talk a little bit about Consolidated Outland, which I believe is. Let me double check. There's a. Yeah, it's on over here. Let me just check and see where it is. I think it's in Hall 3. Let's go Greycat next. Let's go Greycat because Greycat's older. Greycat is, yeah, Hall 4. Hall 4. We're going to go to Hall 4. So Argo would make the Rossi. I mean, they're not a military manufacturer, but they could. It also is appropriate to go to Greycat because Greycat's headquarters is also Mars. Mars is sort of the industrial heart of the UEE, or was for a long time. It's still a huge part of the industrialization of the UEE. Can you tell that the developers are fans of Warhammer 40K? Before we get to the lore, fun out of lore fact, the reason why it's called Greycat is because it's named after one of the developers' cats, whose literally name was Greycat, because he was gray. All right, we got to start with the PTV here. So, Greycat. Greycat was founded in 2337, making it as old. I think it's slightly older than Argo, but it's one of the oldest companies in the verse that's still around. It was founded by a man by the name of Otis Broussard. And it was founded on Mars. and its job was to be an industrial manufacturer, effectively slightly changing the industrial throughput to kind of help build the new things, mostly mining. But they were kind of safety equipment was their main development. They didn't do much. They were they made enough to get by. But it wasn't until Ruben Pardue entered in, when did he join? 2381, I think, or 2382. That things started to change for the better. So a man by the name of Ruben Pardue was, he's a genius. He was like a certified genius. His goal was, he was a terraforming geo hacker. It was his, he went to school for. He went to University of Redder. He was one of the first graduating classes of University of Redder. And he wanted to geohack planets. And so he got hired by Titania Terraforming, whose sole job was to, or Titania, I think is how you say it. It's from, what play is that from Shakespeare? What dreams make, no, not what dream. Midsummer's Night's Dream. Midsummer's Night's Dream. And they were attempting to terraform Uriel in the Oberon system. The thing about Uriel is that it's an ice ball. It is very difficult to terraform, and it's so cold and it's so far away from the green zone that it was seen as impossible. So they had a bunch of really crazy ideas to try to terraform the world, which is what Titania Terraforming was designed to do, all named after, the Shakespeare characters. So Pardue immediately took to it and became the manager of all of the tunnels, because they're building a series of tunnels into the core of Uriel to try to reheat the planet and turn it back on, to try to turn on the core and to warm up the surface temperature. But during his underground operations, he would, in his free time, sketch out things that would make his job easier. So he came up with a bunch of different ideas to make things safer and better for what they could do. However, on May 23rd, 2381, a massive mining collapse happened and killed a bunch of people and nearly killed Pardue. He was caught in the collapse and he lost his left arm above the elbow. So, basically his left forearm was completely gone. It might be flipped on this because that's my left arm. And he fell into a deep depression. Though it wasn't his fault. He blamed himself for not foreseeing it. And he was let go from Titania. And even though Titania offered to give him a prosthetic arm so he could work, he refused to get it because he blamed himself for the accident, and he felt that was his penance for having people die on his watch. And he would have just probably slunked off into obscurity if his friend from college, one Pippa Broussard, the daughter of Otis Broussard, found him, grabbed him, and forced him to come work for her. It's just like, you at least got to do something. Let me help you. And she was trying to get away from her father, who was still as a member of the board, even though he had given her the company. And so she had opened up a kind of a new technologies wing in Croshaw, because Croshaw had just recently been terraformed. So in there, she stuck Ruben Pardue, and what he did was he took the sketches that he had during his time in the mines and turned them into reality. Because he's like, these are things that would have saved the lives of the people who had lost if they were available. So the first thing he did was create the Ariel armor set. The same Ariel armor set we use today, made by Greycat. It's a mining armor designed to protect you in case of mine collapses. It sold amazingly well. Now, I think it's been modified since 2381 with all the new technologies, but the same basic idea and layout is there. It's the same sort of concept. After that, he was given the ability to lead the new technologies teams at Greycat and refused to. He just said, I'm just here to work. I don't want to lead anybody because last time I led people, they died. So he just sat in his chair and he worked in his office and his lab and he worked on new things. So while the real armor did really well, the thing that revolutionized everything was his next creation, which we know as the, does anybody have it on them? Yeah, you do, right here. We got two of them, in fact. This. The Pyro multi-tool. So this is pretty much the same multi-tool, same functionality. I'm gonna look at it. I can't carry it. You can hold on to it. You can see right there, personal multi-tool. This Pyro multi-tool PYT. This is something that he wanted to use for motion efficiency. You can take it back. I just wanted to let you grab it. This blew open the doors. Effectively, Greycat became a household name because of how well this sold. Its utility, its versatility became prevalent really off the bat. Again, obviously, the original Pyro multi-tool is not the same as what we have now, but the original concept of a multi-tool, that was able to be used effectively for mining in the, at that time, 24th century, was huge. And it was so huge that a bunch of other companies made knockoffs. And so Greycat spent the first 100 years of its existence, of the multi-tool's existence, just fighting in court to try to get knockoff competitors who were who basically just copied it and sold it on their own. Over time, they began to increase in popularity, but they mostly coasted on these ideas until the 27th century. Now we don't know exactly when. I can look it up real quickly. It probably is there. Yeah, we don't know exactly when it was built, but likely in the 27th century, we have the first vehicle from Greycat, which is this right here, the Personal Transport Vehicle, or PTV. Now, this isn't the same one, but it is based off of a sketch that Ruben Pardue made for a mining cart, basically a mining safety cart. The original version of this did not have the big open window like this. It was actually cut off to right about here or something like that. And the top was completely enclosed with an armored top. The idea being a vehicle that was small enough to get inside tunnels, but tough enough and fast enough to get out and outrun a collapse. So the roof would protect the drivers and the passenger from getting hit. So the original version they sold was heavy armored, but when they were coming off the assembly lines, the workers would take completed ones and then drive up and down the assembly line to do things. They would take them and use them as utility vehicles to drive up and down on the assembly line, and they would race each other and that kind of stuff. And the Greycat owners at the time were like, this is a really fun vehicle. Could we turn this into just a civilian non-mining vehicle? And so they redesigned some of the concepts, removed the top, lightened it up a little bit, and they created what we know today as the PTV. So this is the last design, sort of Ruben Pardue that was existed. And since then, they've gotten heavily into vehicles for utility purposes. Since then, we've had the creation of the Rock and the Rock DS. Remember, Greycat is a mining organization, a mining company, so these were sort of taking advantage of the major advancements that MISC had made in the creation of the the Prospector. They made the Prospector. They worked with the company that makes a lot of mining arms to help miniaturize the tech. And since then, that miniaturization has gone crazy because now you see them all over the place, including Greycat, obviously. So you have the Rock and the Rock DS. Funny enough, the Rock DS was the original design for the company. They wanted to release by IAE 2945, but they couldn't have enough time to complete it. So instead, they used the Rock. They simplified it, slimmed it down, and created the Rock. And then afterwards, they came out with the DS. The success of the Rock moved on to the creation of this, the Greycat STV, which stands for, I think, Standard Utility, Standard Transport Vehicle, or Sport Terrain Vehicle, Sport Terrain Vehicle. This is sort of like an evolution of the PTV. Its main job was to get people from point A to point B, but a little bit more rugged, a little bit higher up, so you can like take terrain a little bit better. But it also has like a cargo area, so you can put like some cargo on it. There's one more that isn't available yet, but it was built alongside the sport utility or sport terrain vehicle called the UTV, or just the Ute, which is sort of a slimmed down version of the sport of this, sort of like a buffed up version of the PTV, but smaller. And this is the most recent creation, which is the MXC, I think. Yeah, the MXC chassis. Now, there's no lore, though I'm very interested in this series, because this is one of those very interesting things. How Greycat, the mining company, and to a degree like a utility vehicle company, got a military contract. Because both of these, this is the MTC and that's the MDC. I think what does the MT, what does the T stand for? Tactical Center, and that's the Mobile Defense Center. They've said that this is now a chassis that CIG is working through, which is called the MXC. So I'm assuming it's the same thing. That's in verse. A lot of the stuff that's like meta becomes context within the verse. But these were released very recently. My guess would be, best guess would be they had a chance to, well, knowing how CIG writes things, this is speculation on my part, not official lore, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did something like this. Those of you who know, who are in the military, I think they're called side-by-sides or 2x2s. There is a type of vehicle that's very small and rugged, that's a civilian vehicle that the military has adopted, and a lot of militaries around the world have adopted, not just the United States, that are basically like ATVs, but two-seaters, and you drive them like a car. Most people call them Utes. My guess is the military was making use of it for small, rugged, like distant locations, just like the military does. They were in the Star Citizen universe. The UTV is basically that. MRZR is what it's called. And so using that, because they did so well, UEE approached Greycat and said, well, we love this, and it's how rugged and useful it is. Can you make this to help us kind of build the military security vehicles for the aging Ursa? Because the Ursa is based off of the Marine Transport Vehicle, the MTV, or Marine Rapid Deployment Vehicle, the MRDV, I think is what it's called. It's a tracked vehicle that was more heavily armored than the Ursa, made by RSI. So they wanted something that's the same size, but sort of next generation. Sorry, it's the ESE. Okay. So that would be my guess as to the lore behind it, is that it's probably just an evolution of the military using the UTV for its own purposes and saying, hey, we could maybe get these guys another contract to see if they can do stuff. And so they're taking the sort of approach that they make to vehicles and applying it to a military standard. But yeah, the Greycat's not going anywhere. They even make military, specifically military utility, or pyro multi-tools that are specifically for the military. All right, with that, let's move over to talk about CNOU. The stream is so interesting. Wow, I just stumbled upon it. Well, I do a lore series on YouTube under TheAstroHistorian, where I do lore tours, where I go on the floor and I bring people like this, and we go through and talk a little bit about the story of the ships on the floor, like the lore that's been written, and then the ships the manufacturers as well. Just give you the context of the creation. Speaking of the Real, here you go. Right here, that's the Real. That's Ruben Pardee's invention. It's not changed that much since its original concept. We don't know what it originally looked like, but this is probably a little bit, pretty much the same. Happy Thanksgiving to you too, there, Chewed Gumballs. We are recording this or doing this on Thanksgiving. So. All right, the new kid on the block. CNOU or Crusader Consolidated Outland. So the best way to describe Consolidated Outland is it's the brainchild of one. Why am I blanking on his name? His last name is Kerner, Silas Kerner. Silas Kerner, who is the inheritor of the Kerner family fortune from Bremen. Bremen is sort of like space Oklahoma, space Texas, space Midwest in the United States. It's run by a handful of very big families who were the first founders of it, but it's mostly agricultural. It's an agri world. At one point, it was the breadbasket, especially during the Devoran Wars. It was the breadbasket of the UEE. Most of the food that the UEE military was relying on came from Bremen. It's still very important, but there's more local production now that it's not as important, which is one of the reasons why Silas Kerner created Consolidated Outland. The system itself is sort of falling on uneconomic times, but Silas Kerner is a huge ship fan. He has an original Zeus, not a Zeus Mark II, a Zeus Mark I. I think he has multiples of the Zeus Mark Is. He has a famous unmade prototype called the Drake Lobster. So he's a huge ship buff. He has very poignant opinions on everything. He hates the Gladiator. He thinks the Aurora is a shitbox. Like he has very pointed opinions on anything aviation and aerospace. So when he was, but he made his money as an investor. So by the time he was 16, he had taken a loan from his parents, a small loan of $1 million credits, and turned it into multi-millions of credits investing in the stock market. And so by the time he was turned of age, by the time he was 18, he was already independently wealthy and already paid back his money. So he was wealthy on his own compared to his parents, even without his parents' money. And he did what he always wanted to do, which is start his own ship company. But it was very difficult to do so because he was going against the big shots. So his first thing was to take on the starter market. But before he could get there, he had to figure out a way to make money. And so what he did is he hired a bunch of ship manufacturers or ship designers to help him build out little things to get them started in the ships and to understand ships. What they did was aftermarket kits. So pretty much every aftermarket kit that you've seen in the verse today is likely a Consolidated Outland aftermarket kit. They became the kings of aftermarket kits. Most famously, the F7A Mark I Hornet. There is a kit that was used that players used when they wanted to get their F7As, F7C Mark Is into F7A Mark Is. That is a Consolidated Outland kit. That was probably the most popular kit, was converting the F7C into an F7A. And as a result, they use that funding, that startup, to build what we know today as the Mustang. So the Mustang, let me see exactly when they were founded. Consolidated Outland was founded in 29. Nope. This is 29. Gosh, they don't even have the dates on here. Huh.
That I've been getting to go to these for almost a decade now. Stuff like this is exactly why I love going to the IAE so much.
Seeing it in person is a lot different than I imagined.
2944. So in 2944, they released the Mustang. Now, the Mustang is intentionally designed to defeat the Aurora. Its whole purpose was to replace the Aurora as the standard ship that everyone bought when you wanted a ship. In-game, in the universe, ships are very expensive. You can already see millions of credits for ships. So even the Aurora, which is something like 200K, is still very pricey for your average person. So you only got it if you really needed it. And Silas Kerner wanted to create a stylish alternative to the Aurora. everyone had been trying to get in on the ground floor. The 300 series was designed specifically to unseat the Aurora. Then the 100 series, the Cutter is also up there, all trying to kind of unseat the Aurora's stranglehold on the starter market. And the Mustang is the only one that got to the closest to it. And it started with 4, the Alpha, Beta, Delta, and Gamma. There are some specific ones. I think it's like the Omega and there's another one I can't remember. But there's a bunch of different like special release versions they've done, even in fiction. For actually, there's was a twin Mustang where they just took two chassis and welded them together for longer range. But that's pretty much where the company got started making ships. And after the creation of the Mustang, they decided they were going to take on the big shots, which was the Pioneer, in 2947. However, the Pioneer is a lot of work going from a Mustang to a Pioneer. So in the process, the developers at Consolidated Outland wanted to sort of bridge the gap, and that's where we come up with the Nomad. Let me do this because there's actually some lore behind this.
Wow, look at this beauty. How fun would it be to own one?
I don't know. I don't think this is as good as some of their other work.
This was a spin-off program from the Mustang called the Manta, or Multi-Crew Accessible New Transport. The idea was to replace or to compete with the starter medium haulers. Or actually not a starter medium haulers. It was designed as a Mustang. This was supposed to originally be the Mustang, or one of the Mustang ideas, concepts. And by 2944, it sort of ballooned into becoming a large, affordable multi-crew ship. It reduced. It's basically 20% the cost of a Constellation to build, so it's pretty cheap. Created by Dr. Where are you? Dr. Roland.
I really appreciate they've got
As
some
part of that
flashy
design.
designs on display.
What is her? We don't have her full name. I have to look it up there. But basically, it's a ship I'm going to have to do a lore video on, especially since if I do a complete history of Consolidated Outland, there's lots of interesting stuff there. But effectively, this ship was designed with a lot of different aspects to sort of take advantage of what they learned from making the Mustang. Though the designer, Dr. Roland, she was not very amenable. They got into a fight with Silas Kerner, and so this thing has changed a couple of times before its final iteration. But the big thing was that this entirely was created with this in mind: the hoverquad. The hoverquad is created at the same time as the Nomad, and it was designed to take advantage of the open seat in the back. Effectively, they wanted to create a ship that was larger than the Mustang, single-seater still, but able to haul more cargo and to be more industrial. The idea was to This is 2950. So I actually have the Silas Kerner speech right here, which I'll read. When we introduced the Mustang line back in 2944, our aim was to reshape the dream of spaceflight. Since then, much has changed in the way we traverse the stars. The universe itself has expanded, with infinite opportunities waiting for us, for those of us brave enough to chase them. Time has come to reshape the dream once again, to push further than ever before. Time has come, the Nomad. Paramilitary forces apparently use the Nomad as well, because of its it's got a lot of missiles and such. But it's not as effective in dogfighting as other ships are, especially the Mustang even. So this is sort of just an example of the direction they wanted to go for. The innovative hover skids, the idea is going a little bit different from other corporations. This sort of emphasizes how CNOU does things. Their sort of style is they don't have a style. They do whatever they want. Now, this is sort of a bit of a trivia, but the actual ship itself, meta-wise, the designers, this is supposed to be the Cybertruck. Yes, that Cybertruck. This was supposed to be the Cybertruck of the Star Citizen universe. Though I don't think it's nearly as divisive as the Cybertruck. I do believe that that women like this vehicle. Yeah, that is Consolidated Outland. All right, let's head over here and let's see if you have any questions in chat or Discord. Feel free to ask them.
I'm going to move on to the next hall, I think.
If you want to go on ahead, that's fine. I'll catch up with you later.
I'm fine. I should probably drink that, thank you. At 59%. Reminds me of the ED Asp. Yeah, it's very similar. Like, we joke about that it's Star Citizen Asp, but like the design initial inspiration was the Cybertruck.
Yeah, they've done a good job. And knowing their full history.
Don't need the pickle. I'm not eating the pickle. Is the reason why the CNO does floating landing gear aesthetic, practical, or no? It's basically aesthetic. I'd have to look up into the deeper into the lore itself. We're challenging Big Wheel. Yeah. Eat that pickle? No. No, I'm not eating the pickle. Did someone ask about Star Citizen? What is the single argument against the idea that this game is a scam? You can play the game right now for free. They do it frequently, pretty much every month, and you don't have to pay a dime. If you like it, you don't have to. There's no requirements. Also, the every single ship that you saw here on the floor is not only rentable today, but it's also purchasable in game. There's a handful of ships you can't purchase in game yet, but a lot of those you can also earn in game through other means. So, and every time they add more ships, eventually they all come to the game for you to unlock. So the single biggest argument of this game being a scam is that it's a game you can play right now and see for yourself. Now, does that mean it's not buggy?
Another year, another IAE.
Does that not look buggy? That's buggy as hell. Look at that. The little weird lighting and stuff like that's going off.
Better exploring the ship with someone else.
You can kind of see the pixelation from here. There are some issues still, and I couldn't even get into the game yesterday, to give you an example, but it is what it is. A question. Is there more we know about the military Greycat multi-tool? Or the bits we see from Squadron 2 are the only ones we got functionality? It's only from Squadron that we know that it exists.
I don't know.
I imagine it's similar to how, the U.S. issues multi-tools that are like Swiss Army knives. Question, same vein as Mopar.
I think I've seen enough of these.
You think we're ever going to see a prototype games like the Lobster? I'd love to see the Drake Lobster. I don't even know what it is. All we know that it exists. I really like hearing about those prototype ships in lore. Wondering if we saw those in the game in the future, like on a museum. I'd love for CIG to do that. Like, I'd love to see an original Zeus on display so you can see it as you walk around. Or the original OUC, even if it's just like a fun mock-up. Since the announcement of the Galaxy next year, can we talk a little bit about that? Not really much. The Galaxy is a ship that we don't know a lot about in lore. We don't know if it's new or old. Typically, I default to new if there's no lore about it being old. What is generally the most expensive component or system of a starship? The power core.
This is the first time I've been to one of these.
Probably split between the power core and the jump drive. Jump drives are very expensive because, or not jump drive, the quantum engine. Because the quantum engine is super expensive, but the power core to power the quantum engine is also expensive. But most ships, the quantum drive can be swappable. In large ships, the power core is built into the ship. That's how expensive it is. Maybe there'll be a Silas Kerner museum on Bremen to display the collection. I'd love to see that. Did Argo make round type ship like a UFO? Or I remember that wrong. They never did. The Execute and Grim are designing an Argo ship, a fan ship that's a UFO inspired, in honor of one of the developers who always wanted to make a UFO but never did before he. Question. Could you tell us a little bit lore about the Pioneer? Sure. What we know about it. Again, I think I'm going to do a complete history of Consolidated Outland because there's a lot more on the Nomad than I remember. The Pioneer was built just after the release of the Mustang. It's called Project Ranger. And the idea behind Project Ranger was that they wanted to have a ship who could build an entire outpost in one go. So you could buy a ship and either use it to fabricate frontier housing on your own, or for large communities. Basically, communities could pitch together and buy one of these if they wanted to go to a remote moon or planet, and they could easily build these structures and customize them to their needs rather than having to go buy prefab modules and then have them shipped to the location and then dropped and assembled. These are basically, if you know about this, the house in a box concept that was pioneered by, I want to say, Macy's. There was a catalog in the 1800s where you could buy a house and it would be shipped to you, and you could just assemble it in Sears. Thank you, Sears. The Sears catalog. You could literally build it in one go, but you built it in pieces. It gave you all the pieces to build it. This isn't whereas like the way that modules were done before, like settlements were done before, was kind of like a prefab, like prefabs today, like trailer homes, where you could build it and it would be shipped to you on the back of a ship, and you would just plop it down in a location. But you had to build it with all of the, you'd have to buy it with all of the bells and whistles already installed, and then have it shipped to you rather than build it on your own. Question, why did CIG kill the Beta's mojo? Because they don't like fun. In before the Drake is a lobster is a prototype vulture. The vulture itself, we actually know its history, so it wouldn't have been a prototype. But it could be the prototype thruster prototype that was the vulture was based off of. If you go to look to the outposts on Stanton's moons, those are the prefabs. And so the idea behind it was, instead of doing prefabs, and even the stuff you see in Pyro are prefabs, they're sort of just like pre-designed modules that you not necessarily were shipped there, but you built in situ with those modules. The idea behind the Pioneer was, instead of having these modules which were pre-designed ahead of time or shipped over, you would be able to have a design that you could modify as you build it. So you could have a design that was built like a Pyro right next to one that looks like it came pre-brought if you wanted to. So it gave the flexibility to those communities to build as they want to. And one of the downsides of colonization is the expense it is to ship everything to a new colony. So the idea of the Pioneer was to bring the cost down of building a colony so that you could expand where you wanted to go more, which would increase settlements, businesses, and everything. The idea to effectively make your own factory, have your own factory on hand while building a new settlement.
I've been pretty blown away by everything on the show floor this year.
Hard to believe that I've been getting to go to.
What is the ship that we don't know the name of that we will see this year? Like the company's role size. What is the first ship? What do you mean? We actually know, they actually mentioned the Consolidated Outland in the latest video that they did. There's like another weird medium ship. It is a Consolidated Outland crafting ship. It's basically a mini Pioneer.
Wow, what a real beauty. You can really see the influence of some classic design.
Like, what is the first ship you think will be an unnamed next year? I think it's that Consolidated Outland mini ship.
It'd be fun to use for a weekend.
Forge. Do you think the Talon Swing gimmick will have some purpose? Probably.
Next haul, I think.
I really hope.
Mostly their gimmick is the design ethos of the Tavaran.
From what I've seen so far, I really think this is the manufacturer to beat this year.
I have to say, I kind of think they're a bit overrated as a manufacturer, to be honest.
Starford. IRL, there are companies that make flawless replicas of old classic cars. Do you think we could see something similar in the verse? Possibly if CIG designs it. You got to remember that the lore doesn't dictate design. The design dictates the lore. So we could easily see more of those concepts, some of those older ideas come back, but it would require CIG to build them in a way that is usable in the verse. That basically means coming out with a new ship. Hence the Zeus Mark II, since the Zeus Mark I was never designed as a ship in Star Citizen, it was designed as sort of the prototype for all the ships in Star Citizen. Like today, you probably wouldn't be driving a Model T, and it's very difficult to find one or even build one from scratch. But you could probably build a 1930s, 1940s, or like a modern rendition of a Model T with all the bells and whistles, but it would look a little different, kind of thing.
All right, if I'm going to keep this
They said today the concept name is the Ford. Okay.
Yeah, I'm about ready too. Let's go.
Question: do you think we will get a Gray's Market version of the Wolf called the Copian? Maybe.
It's not the best I've seen from this manufacturer, but still a pretty solid showing. I heard that their CEO was actually.
All right, let's get to the office for now. Do a few more minutes here. Thank you for all you on the floor as well. I'm going to log off here. In game, I mean. Do we know anything about the Stingray? What's the Stingray? Did they have a name? Was that a name for something? I haven't seen the ship talk completely, so. Stingray is a name for a Kruger ship next year. Almost certainly, it's going to be A medium ship, be my guess. Either way, it's trash because Dell hates Kruger for Siege using it as their selling modules in game monetization style. I got no problem with it as long as they make it available in game. They should be making it available in game the same day. But I don't know. It's like CIG doesn't understand that people will still buy it, even if it's available in game. Do you foresee Greycat filling the gap with more industrial building crafting vehicles in the future? Their recent release seems like a focus on military branch. Well, remember the MCS or MXC. The next MX series vehicle is a crafter. The MFC. Yeah, that's what it's called. The MFC is going to be a crafting vehicle. The one that I thought was going to be a deployable like artillery piece or anti-aircraft is actually a crafter. Is it MSV? Because they already said the MXC. MXC is the naming convention. Yes, it's called the MFC. Makes sense. The chassis is the MXC's chassis. I hope the battlecruiser someone mentioned is coming from Anvil. That would be my guess. We didn't get Pioneer or Ironclad. The silhouettes lied. The silhouettes were focusing on what they wanted to get done in the next 18 months. And they said that they would try to. That's the thing with the silhouettes, is that the silhouettes are never guaranteed to get, but they're working on it. What other small mech suits are there, meaning ATLS, Geo, or coming? We know for sure there's the Zeus system. It's the Virgil Zeus armor, and which is not confusing at all. But the Zeus system from Virgil is the prototype for all combat Titan suits. It is not the prototype. It is the standard for all modern combat Titan suits. So we know that's coming. We're likely going to see one which is, I'm calling it the Cut, the ATLS Cut, which is a EVA variant that's designed, that has EVA thrusters that's designed for salvage. So if you go out in space, it'll give you some maneuvering capabilities compared to other suits, so it can actually work in space. So you've got the Geo, which has the jump jets for getting to locations, and you have the EVA suit with the cut so it could salvage in space. We know that one's probably coming around because it's been in concept images for like 6 years. Wonder what their take on the battlecruiser will be, because traditionally they're lightly armored but outgunned boats with cruiser and battleship guns. The one thing you got to understand about Star Citizen ship name conventions, or the UEE ship name conventions for capital ships, is they make no sense if you compare them to modern capital ships. You got to think about it in the sense that 200 years ago, capital ships ships at the line and stuff like that were very different from the ships that would come out to become the first generation dreadnoughts and cruisers and destroyers, and modern naming conventions are very different from the early 20th century naming conventions. So any sort of similar design ships in the 30th century are going to be very different from modern conventions. That's just it. So the names for modern reflection, a frigate is more like a destroyer is more like a cruiser, and the cruiser is more like a battle cruiser, and a supercarrier is actually more like a carrier / battleship. So any more questions? We'll wrap this up because it is Thanksgiving and I gotta get back to the family. That's another video I gotta do in terms of like making sense of Star Citizen's capital ships to kind of give people a context of what they're designed to. Because like, for instance, Corvette, there's Gunship. Gunship is the smallest class of subcaps that has similar subcaps. Then there's Corvette, which is sort of like an upgunned gunship, but just below a frigate, designed for patrol. Then you've got Frigate, which is like a destroyer. It's designed to go out on its own or in groups to supplement the fleet. Then you've got the Destroyer, which is more like a cruiser in the sense that, you know, it kind of hold its own, and then so on. So thank you for hanging out, y'all. Thank you for watching. Are special events like Xenothreat already within the lore? Yes, they're already in the lore. Xenothreat's in the lore. Everything that's been a lore event, like Jump Town, Siege of Orison, the limited time events like the Regen Crisis and the Frontier Fighters, the Fall of the Frontier Fighters, all of those are lore pieces. So thank you for watching. Thank you for hanging out. And like I say every time, remember, ex Historia ad Astra.